there's a recognition with regulators that actually transparent blockchains are national security problems. There just haven't been good tools for them to figure out how to fix it. And you can't fix it by backdooring code. You can't fix it by forcing KYC on decentralized global public goods.
But you wanted to always make sure regulation, compliance, you guys weren't doing anything egregious. Well, can you just describe what that balance was like in the early days of Zcash?
Welcome back to The Roll Up.
This is your home to learn from the biggest guests, the brightest minds at the tip of innovation.
Our goal is to help spread the collective knowledge of everyone in our community.
We are breaking crypto out of its echo chamber and taking it to the real world.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy it.
Josh, welcome to AI Supercycle, founder of Zcash. Zcash has been on an incredible tear. You posted a recent update, kind of an Elon-inspired, what did I get done this week in Zcash? But it was much, much more than a week. You guys recently had a 9th anniversary. Most crypto founders haven't been on this planet 9 years, let alone have their crypto project running for 9 years. I remember when Zcash launched, I was watching it on Poloniex, and the first tick went up to like 7 Bitcoin per 1 Zcash. And it really felt like the flipping was real and it was happening right before our eyes. Now people are rediscovering this and coming full circle that, hey, maybe Zcash is the next Bitcoin. Josh, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. So first, point of clarification. I'm not the founder of Zcash. I came in, I was in the community before it launched. I joined Zuko and the ECC team in early 2018 full time. So I've been a fan and around since the beginning, and like you, watched it pop off at launch. But there was actually Zcash has a kind of a great story with the founding fathers kind of being the 7 scientists who figured out how to bring privacy to Bitcoin style blockchain, and then Zuko assembled a team to actually realize it and make it happen.
Yeah, man, maybe that's a good place to start. Could you tell us about sort of the founding fathers and the origin story? Because I think people who weren't around back then, they didn't really see it happen, and therefore they don't really understand the sort of 0 to 1 invention that took place when it came to shielded transactions. It came to bringing privacy to Bitcoin. Can you describe, just in a concise manner, what was the 0 to 1 where these scientists, they got in a room, they invented this new thing? What could you just put a pin on that?
Yeah, great question. Like, so there's a lot of history going back before even Bitcoin existed. So zero knowledge cryptography has been around for 30 some years, but largely kind of theoretical math and used in academic settings without a lot of practical application. When Satoshi launched Bitcoin, he had looked at zero knowledge and said he would love to figure out how to add anonymity to Bitcoin or greater privacy to Bitcoin, but he couldn't figure out how to use zero knowledge cryptography to make that happen. Famously, Hal Finney was very interested in zero knowledge cryptography and trying to figure out how to bring that to Bitcoin so that Bitcoin would have privacy. But it's very complicated math. And so some scientists independently around the world started working on it. There were scientists at Johns Hopkins, at Technion, at MIT, at a number of universities. So they started working on it and eventually kind of figured it out, wrote some papers. I won't go into all of that history. Brought it to the Bitcoin core team. The Bitcoin core team said, no, it's too novel, but why don't you try it out on another chain? So what they did is took the Bitcoin core code, forked it, and added zero knowledge encryption. And that's where Zcash was born.
Yeah. Zero knowledge encryption. Shout out Zuko. Shout out Ellie Ben Sasson, who's now gone to Starknet and done great things with ZK Starks. This was the 0 to 1 invention that really was it was a cataclysmic change in math, cryptography, computer science that really drove Zcash to the world and made it a real thing. Now, you guys have recently had a lot of attention, a lot of popularity, a wide following that has now encountered Zcash, who wasn't around then but has gotten involved more recently. This is probably a multifactorial. There's quite a few factors that go into why this is taking place now. One of them, I think, to shout out Near, who is sponsoring AI Supercycle. You guys have hooked up with Near to do Near Intents, and this has sort of built a bridge between Zcash and the rest of the on-chain economy. Previously, Zcash, because of all of its properties, sort of had it set aside almost on an island where it wasn't connected or compatible with a lot of other blockchains. Now, on-chain finance, digital assets has really exploded on several different blockchains. And now Zcash has composability and compatibility with all, if not all of these other blockchains. Near Intents helps to power that. Is this what you would say is one of the more prominent reasons as to what has driven Zcash's recent success? Or do you think this is sort of out there with a few other factors? What are some of these factors that you think have driven Zcash's recent success?
Yeah, I think it's a confluence of things, and Near was a massive, massive unlock. So, when Zcash for years, wasn't performant, it didn't scale, the user experience was awful, and largely because the cryptography was so novel, and there's a lot of things we had to figure out. So we got all that stuff figured out a couple years ago. Orchard was activated with something called Network Upgrade 5, and it allowed us to really start building up the stack. So I came in, I took over as the CEO of ECC in January of 2024. And what we decided to do is really focus on the user experience. Yes, we're going to continue to do core. So the ECC team does core development. The ECC team was the group that Zuko founded. And we built a wallet called Zashi. And if you look at the timeline, when Zashi released in roughly the end of the first quarter of 2024, the shielded pool, the total number of shielded transactions or shielded tokens started to grow exponentially. We worked with Keystone to provide hardware wallet support, and the slope increased even more in December of 2024. We added the ability in Zashi, so Zashi's the wallet, to swap in and out of Zec just about 8 weeks ago. And if you look at the graph with a shielded pool, it's like straight line up. And what that tells you is that this is not just speculative purchases where somebody's going onto a centralized exchange, buying the token, sitting on it, watching candles, putting in orders. They're taking it off the exchange into a shielded wallet, so self-custodying, and using it as it was intended. So yes, we've seen this kind of great attention and the price go up. But if you look at the real chart is the amount of Zec that's being stored in the shielded pools. It's gone absolutely perpendicular.
Yeah, I love it. Hockey stick growth. Could you explain and I think there's a lot of people that are now curious about Zcash, where maybe they've been around for a while, maybe they got into crypto through either Bitcoin or the Ethereum ecosystem. Now, the benefit of the other graph, the price graph, catches a lot of people's attention. And then a lot of people come in and they actually appreciate what Zcash might have to offer them. Could you describe, for anyone who's curious about Zcash and not as familiar with its depth, could you describe the shielded pool? What is the purpose of it, given the broader mechanism of Zcash? How does it help facilitate privacy on Zcash?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, Zcash is a fork of the Bitcoin code base. So it has the same kind of tokenomics, so 21 million fixed supply. There's some changes that have been introduced as it relates to block times and things like that. The block sizes are slightly bigger because they have to accommodate proofs. And there's some other innovation that's going on there, but the basis of it was Bitcoin. So you take Bitcoin and you add the ability. We know Bitcoin is traceable, it's trackable, and so you add this kind of privacy guarantees, and people people don't want to have their wealth exposed on the internet. So if you think about it, anytime you've got Bitcoin, you're storing in an address. That address data gets tagged. If you buy it on an exchange and you move it off, you buy your Bitcoin, you move it off into your own address, then that address is then associated with you. If you've transacted with somebody that did something maybe not good, it wasn't any fault of yours, that Bitcoin is tainted, it's not fungible. So there's a kind of all of these problems with the transparency. What people want is the ability to securely store their wealth in a place where it's not trackable, it can't be censored, it's completely fungible, and that's what the encryption provides. Now, the Zcash does provide two types of addresses. It provides a transparent address, which is the Bitcoin style address, and then it provides the shielded address. So you get the privacy guarantees with Zcash when you move your tokens into the shielded address, and the shielded shielded pool is the total amount of Zcash that's stored in shielded addresses.
Relay, low fees, lightning speed, and the power of multi-chain at your fingertips. Instant multi-chain payments. Choose any token on any chain. 75 plus networks supported. More than 5 million users. 8 billion plus volume processed. 70 million plus transactions. Fast, reliable, everywhere. Start swapping today. Only on Relay. Blockchain shortcuts, templates, and widgets. Launch without friction. For builders, by builders. Visit enso.build. The wait is over. The Talus testnet is live. Be part of the revolution. Join now at testnet.talus.network.
The concept of shielded, like every once in a while, there's sort of a term that gets coined, and it has real sticking power. Tell me more about how you guys came up with shielded. Why did you choose this as sort of the concept around privacy on Zcash?
I think it was actually Paige. It was somebody that's not at ECC anymore, and I believe the lore is that she came up with shielded and recommended that to Zuko before I joined ECC. So I don't have all of those details, but that's my understanding.
Okay. Well, we'll keep it rolling. There is deep lore around Zcash and multiple. Maybe we'll find more pockets as we continue. I'm curious. There was a friend of ours, Tulip King, who tweeted. He's been a big fan of Zcash as of recently. He said over 2 trillion in Swiss banks, private money, and only 1.8 billion in shielded Zcash so far. Is this a fair comparison? What in your mind is the TAM for shielded money?
Well, part of the problem with using Swiss banks as a TAM, I almost think it's too small. So the intention with Zcash, yes, you'll be able to store your wealth. Yes, you'll be able to self-custody. You don't have to go to a third party, but you also want to be able to spend it. And we see that through the Zashi wallet as well. Like Near did a really clever thing with Near Intents. They allowed us to send to an exact amount out. So normally with a normal swap, right? Like I'm going to swap 1 BTC for Zcash, and then I get a variable amount of Zcash based upon liquidity and current price and so on. What they allowed it to do is to say, actually, I want to receive exactly 10 ZEC, and I'm going to swap in whatever amount of BTC it's going to take to give me 10 ZEC. So what that allows me to do is, like, Robbie, if you're selling a t-shirt for $10, you want it in USDC, that's the only currency you take. I can send from my shielded ZEC, from my shielded storage to you, exactly 10 USDC. It's a couple clicks through the wallet, makes it super easy. So what is the market size for that? Yes, I've stored it in my Swiss bank account in my pocket, as some people kind of view it, But I've easily spent it with very low fees very quickly, and you've received exactly the amount of currency you want to receive. So I'd say the TAM and what we're actually trying to do is to billions of users, not just a select few who can afford to move their wealth into some kind of offshore account. It's anybody that wants to store their wealth privately, securely, and then interoperate with anybody else in the world.
Incredible. This is fulfilling on some of the promises that Bitcoin originally made. Like you're saying, it's private money, but it's not just for the elites that can go to Switzerland, put their money in Swiss bank accounts. This is privacy at scale for users globally around the world and available to everyone. And I think that's incredibly powerful. I think other people are starting to realize this is incredibly powerful. You've had Bitcoiners that I think were lifelong Bitcoiners now with Zashi, with Near Intents, they're coming into Zcash. I think you've also seen on crypto Twitter, some of the louder personalities and characters are now also sort of seeing the light. They're realizing the vision and the value proposition of Zcash. What has it been like? Have you had any interactions with the Merts of the world who kind of came over from Solana, or Ansem, who's starting to really, really get jazzed up about Zcash? Have you had conversations with these guys? What is their take? What is your take seeing the recent popularity and adoption of Zcash as a community?
Yeah, I know Mert. He's been amazing. He's been hugely important in kind of spreading the word. So you had mentioned earlier, people get interested because they see the price go up. It's very reflexive. And then they go down the rabbit hole and they try to, it's like, what is this token? How does it work? What does it do? And he's been a huge driver of that. He's a machine. He's been everywhere, talking about why privacy is important. And he's doing God's work. So I'm very thankful for him in the ecosystem. Ansem I haven't met, so I don't know, but yeah, there are these kind of KOLs. There's these people and influencers out there, I would say both publicly, and a lot of conversations among people that I know that don't like to be public, but are very kind of serious about what we're doing, what we're building, and them being a part of it in their own ways.
Yeah, understandably so. Zcash being a private chain, private money, it makes sense. A lot of the largest proponents of Zcash aren't necessarily in the limelight. That is a no-brainer. Now, you mentioned something earlier, that a lot of the flows you're seeing coming through Zashi coming from Bitcoin. Could you just elaborate on some of the data that you're seeing? I think there's been just a wave of attention coming into Zcash and flows. Is Bitcoin where most of these flows are coming from? Or can you just kind of unpack that, please?
I probably have it as of a couple days ago. So,
sure.
So Zashi's been out for about 8 weeks, but the swap to Zec has only been it's a much shorter amount of time. It's like a couple weeks. So we had the ability to swap out of Zec first, then the ability to pay cross chain, then the ability to swap into Zec. So in about 8 weeks, we've driven about $100 million of flow through Near Intent specifically, and so it's about 2.2 mil a day. And then the currencies, USDC by far is the most swapped into Zec. It's about 11.5 mil, and then BTC is at about 6.6 mil as of a couple days ago. And that's number two. And then it's like Solana, USDT, and ETH, probably who you'd expect based on market cap, right? But
yeah,
yep.
USDC and then Bitcoin, and twice as much USDC as Bitcoin. So I think the narrative that there's a lot of hardline Bitcoiners out there that are now coming over. There is some truth to that, certainly via the numbers, but more than double the amount of Bitcoin that's flown into Zcash has been from USDC. Now, when you're thinking 8 weeks, $100 million in flows, let's get those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers, or is this blowing away your wildest expectations?
No, I don't think they're rookie numbers. Because again, like this is the scale to billions of people.
Yeah.
So I was I'm happy seeing that amount of flow, especially because it's like something we we just launched, and clearly there's product market fit. Clearly people want to swap in and shield their wealth from prying eyes. So it's great. It's great to see that usage and that adoption. And I have expectations that will continue to grow.
Yeah. Part of what could drive further growth, further adoption, more activity on Zcash is more builders, which you guys are one of the the labs company essentially behind Zcash. But now that you've got kind of this basic foundation, it's very, very solid with Near. You guys have this intense protocol. You now have the wallet protocol. You mentioned you're working with Keystone. All of these fundamental building blocks are taking place. We're also sort of in another world seeing perpetuals, prediction markets. We're seeing all of these applications start to reach consumers. Is there a network of builders, an ecosystem of applications that are starting to build on Zcash now that we have the capacity to flow back and forth between other applications? We're going to start to see that ecosystem flourish. What is the Zcash builder ecosystem like in the applications that are currently live or going to go live on Zcash in the near future?
Yeah, so basically there's a number of core development organizations now in the Zcash ecosystem. It didn't always used to be that way, but there's the Zcash Foundation, the separate 501c3. There's Shielded Labs, which is a Swiss-based charity. That's where Zuko is now, along with Nate and Jason McGee and some others there. They're working on core protocol things. There's like Kedit, which is like a strong cryptography company that is building stuff for Zcash. And then there's the bridges that are happening. So somebody's working on an Avalanche bridge currently. So I expect that will happen before not too long. The token, there's a wrap token on Solana. That wrap-sec token, it doesn't provide privacy, but it provides some exposure to DeFi services. Then some are like starting to dig in even deeper. So there's somebody at Aztec that's building some interoperability and working on that. There's somebody at Starkware that published a paper on potential interoperability. And it's been a massive, I think, one of the really cool things, this great relationship we've had with the Near team, and we're really tight with the Near team. People are starting to see this is not a zero-sum game in terms of these chains. If we're going to build a Web3 ecosystem, there's not one chain that's going to own all things. Like we're in our lane, we do what we do it very well. We keep it narrow and not try to be what somebody else does very well. And then we interop. And when we interop, it starts to unlock all these kind of amazing things. That's what we're seeing in the Zcash ecosystem. I think it's just going to exponentially grow from here.
Yeah, incredible. You guys were building a very unique product early on. Now the ecosystem of applications is building on that foundation. We're building interop with all these chains. We're building more apps that can reach consumers. But early on, privacy was, I mean, it wasn't just an outcast. It was targeted by governments. It was targeted by regulatory agencies. And given that the ecosystem of builders wasn't as vast and vibrant as it is today, it was really electric coin. It was you guys that were leading the charge, but you were in the limelight, right? And you kind of had a target on your back. How were you able to navigate that landscape, right? You guys stayed innovative, continued to build and stay ahead of the charge, but you wanted to always make sure regulation, compliance, you guys weren't doing anything egregious. Well, can you just describe what that balance was like in the early days of Zcash and maybe how that's changed in more recent days?
It's been really hard. I think it's a great question. I think it's maybe underappreciated how hard it is. So number one, we write code and we publish the code. And in the US, that's protected speech. And that's been a really important thing, and that's what we've done. But we had to make a decision. I made a decision. We're not going to run infrastructure because you could run infrastructure, and some politicians or some believe that makes you a money services business. I do not. If you're not custodying funds according to the FinCEN guidance, you're not an MSB. But they've taken that. Some folks have taken that position in the DOJ. And so some of these, it's like even you're not even sure what the rules are. I know that I can write code and speech, but that's about all I know. So yes, it's getting more clear. Certain countries, like, and I'm just talking about the US, but I spent a lot of time on the road to Washington, DC, to Tokyo, to Singapore, and met with regulators, in some jurisdictions where Zcash is either banned or choked out. There's a recognition with regulators that actually transparent blockchains are national security problems. There just haven't been good tools for them to figure out how to fix it. And you can't fix it by backdooring code. You can't fix it by forcing KYC on decentralized global public goods. And so I think we still have some challenges ahead. But I do feel a little bit safer. I don't have a fear today that the FBI is going to show up in my front door, like I did during some of these dark years in the past.
No, we don't want them at your door. There's real criminals out there. We want Josh. We want you and Electric Coin to just keep building private money. Keep helping people worldwide. On a similar note, different but related. Tucker Carlson recently went on stage. I think it was at Turning Point a couple of weeks ago. He said he's not interested in Bitcoin because he thinks it was built by the CIA. Do you think he would be interested in Zcash?
Tucker?
Yeah.
I think he should be interested. I've heard him talk about it before, that he couldn't use Bitcoin because it's effectively creating a panopticon. And I 100% agree with him. It is a preferred tool for law enforcement and for governments to be able to trace and track. The problem that they have is, like, in conversations I've had with our U.S. government, is if you have full visibility into people's transactions and their transaction history, so do your adversaries. Yeah. Right? So do hackers. So do, even if you believe you're the good guy, there are bad guys that can also see that stuff. And so I think Tucker's right to call that out. I don't know about the CIA rumor, but it's a little salacious. But the notion that it is a great tool for tracking people it's absolutely true. So I suspect if he looks into what he would get with Zcash, the perspective would be different. But maybe one day, maybe soon.
Yeah.
Maybe all this will get his attention.
We'll see. And you mentioned that you've had conversations with regulators, you've had conversations with governments, including the U.S. How do those conversations tend to go, especially after building in the space and recognizing Bitcoin's properties as kind of the preferred use case for some of this activity that you mentioned, that is quite a bit different from the activity that we're actually looking for. How do those conversations tend to go, even when they're potentially trying to choke you guys out? Is there a convincing case that you make? Is there an open-mindedness and an intent to learn about Zcash and what value it has to offer, or are they intent on shutting it down? How do those conversations tend to pan out?
Like with anything else, it depends on the person and kind of what their motives are. So one of the things, though, that I think is really important that we did is there's a person on my team named Paul, and Paul is based in Washington, D.C., background in computer science and law from Georgetown. And he taught me this. He taught me essentially, you just can't just fly in to some of these places. You can't. We'll just use DC, but this would be true of any. You can't just fly in and walk in the door and speak with a regulator and assume they're going to trust anything you have to say, or they're going to care. It takes years and years and years and years of relationship building, and so. Paul has been out there in DC building relationships, creating a program called Pretty Good Policy that brings regulators, policymakers, industry together for dialogue. And we do that, and we have these kind of dialogues and events, get to know one another, build trust over time, even though we have vastly different agreements. Like I was just out there at a round table, people from the CIA, the FBI, and then people like me who want completely free private money, talking about the issues. And again, it just, that's the approach that we've taken. And so then that has given us kind of an opportunity to speak truth where we need to speak truth.
Asset management redefined, built on ERC 7621. Standardize how you launch, manage, and trade on-chain baskets. This is Alvara, the standard for on-chain asset management. Hibachi, provable, trade perps with speed and security. Earn rewards. Visit hibachi.xyz. Trading on fire.
I'd like to think that we're not so different. These guys, they want to shut crime down. They want to shut down terrorism. They want to do all these things. They also want to enable and empower people. I would like to think so. It's just a matter of
some do, some don't.
sides.
Like, yeah, some really don't want to empower people, and some are looking for a job promotion. Right? They're looking out for their own career, so they want to, So it just depends.
Yeah.
But you find the right people, you build the right allies, and that's what's important.
Absolutely. You guys have an upcoming hackathon, appropriately named Cypherpunk. I do believe Zcash has one of the few remaining CryptoPunk cypherpunk ethos in the space. Not just looking for promotion, looking to change the world. What are you hoping comes out of that hackathon? What are some of the projects or apps that you think are now uniquely enabled by the updates that you guys have done as of recently?
Yeah, Merck's driving this hackathon.
Let's go.
So it's like not coming from us, which is awesome. It used to be, back in the day, it was everything kind of came out of ECC and nothing got done unless we drove it. And now, like, I'm just like seeing these announcements all over the place and no idea what's going on because there's just so much activity in the ecosystem. So it's great. I'm not sleeping as much, but with the hackathon, gosh, I don't know. Like I saw the full announcement yesterday. So I really haven't thought about it. So I'm probably just the wrong guy to ask.
Man, that's okay. I think, you guys are working so hard on Zashi, which is another really key driver of the adoption and innovation as of recently. You're mentioning interop. Ultimately, you want to interop between all of these places. And I really do feel like ZK is this 0 to 1 innovation here where it makes things, if you can verify a signature on a different network, you can accept the state of that chain. What do you think is not necessarily the most the misconception that you think people have, but I think there are a lot of Zcash curious people out there now, and they're on the outside, they're looking in. What do you think is sort of the first entrance, the foray that they should? What would be the first thing that you would want them to know before they enter the ecosystem?
Yeah, I would download a wallet and start using it. Right, you're going to learn the most by using something. There's a lot of FUD and misinformation about Zcash. Some of it is very highly intentional. There's some good kind of FUD responses, right, where people have said, this is untrue and here are the facts, and some of those same people continue with the same FUD in spite of seeing the facts, which just tells me. So like, yeah, follow the right people on Twitter or whatever, and you'll be able to kind of get some information. But download the Zashi wallet. Go out on Twitter and say, hey, I'm new to Zcash. Post your unified address, your shielded address out on Twitter and watch what happens. Yeah. Because what's going to happen is you're going to start to get some Zcash in your wallet along with encrypted notes. So one of the things that Zcash supports is the ability to send a message along with money. And you can send a zero Zcash transaction with a message to somebody. And so then you'll see people start to post the messages that other people are sending them. You can't necessarily, as the wallet holder, you can't see where it came from unless they tell you in the message. But I think something like that is probably the best way to start to get an understanding of of how Zcash works, its privacy properties. You can take that transaction ID of that message that you just got, you can plug it into a block explorer. You can see that there's nothing there to see.
Yeah.
It's not traceable to you. And you can start to see your effect on the shielded pool, right? How you're increasing everybody else's privacy by participating in that pool as well. So that's the best way to get started, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's great. Josh, man, it's been a really fun conversation. We've only got about 5-7 minutes left. And there's sort of this privacy end game that is just orbiting around in my mind. AI is part of this. ZK is obviously part of this. Private money is part of this. What I feel is potentially inevitable transition from stable coins to non-stable coins as our primary form of money, whether that be Bitcoin or Zcash. I'm curious, in your mind, what is your vision? A lot of founders come on here. We ask them, what does 6 months to a year look like? I want to know what 3 to 5 years looks like in your mind when you forecast out what this landscape is going to look like as it evolves.
Yeah, I think we have an interesting window in time to get the world's attention. So I'm terrible at predictions, but I can tell you what we're trying to do.
Okay.
So we want to be able to bring this technology, this capability to have secure money and protect people's agency, around the world. In order to do that, it has to be able to scale. Number one, at the base layer. There's a cryptographer and engineer, Sean Bowe. He started something called Project Tachyon. So Sean is he's a goat, and so what Tachyon will do is it actually fundamentally changes how the underlying technology works in terms of how there's something called nullifiers. I won't go into that whole thing, but that will allow us to scale to billions of users. That will be done. That will be out there. He's got a very ambitious goal of trying to get that out there in the next 12 months. And then we can have super fast transactions and things like that. So it will not only be a better product than Bitcoin as it relates to privacy, but it will scale. The other is building a whole set of robust tools to allow people to easily use their Zec. So the goal with Zashi is to make it really easy for a normal person to get started, to get exposure. It's not like walking into another multi-currency crypto wallet where there's all these kind of shiny things going on and you're not sure and it feels like a casino. It's very simple, very intended for purpose. But we also need capabilities that are richer in capabilities. So what happens if I'm storing a large amount of Zcash and I pass away? Can Zcash, can my family get access to my keys if they don't know where they are? Things like that. And how do you make that super easy so somebody, not easy to kind of get to, but easy to kind of understand a process for getting to? There are use cases like that we will unlock over the next bit of time. And I expect, in my opinion, it is a better Bitcoin. And at some point, and in my opinion, Bitcoin's been captured by Fintech. And that will be the kind of the battleground, is you're going to choose Fintech coin or you're going to choose Freedom coin. And the goal is to be that option for everybody in the world.
Wow. When you put it like that, it's a no-brainer. One of the things that I've seen recently, and it's kind of just coming to me now, is that one of the former founders of Zcash was Eli, right? Eli Ben Sasson, and also one of the scientists in that room inventing ZK. And he's gone and he's done Starknet, but one of the primary things that Starkware and Starknet is focused on these days is trying to do Bitcoin-fi, right? Trying to bridge a lot of Bitcoin over to Starknet, and it really only becomes feasible once OP-Cat is installed into Bitcoin. Does OP-Cat installation into Bitcoin pose a risk to Zcash?
No.
No?
No. again, where if you want encrypted Bitcoin, you're going to get it on Zcash. You're going to get it with Zcash. Yes, there will be a kind of other mechanisms for kind of moving things around across different chains for different use cases. But like what Starknet is doing, Zcash is just fundamentally different from Bitcoin itself, and Bitcoin will never have these kind of properties, and you can try to wrap it in other things. But at its core, it is what it is. It's going to be true to its nature.
Yeah. Awesome. Josh, we got 100 million in flows into Zcash. How are we going to turn that into $1 billion? And then 10 billion?
We're just going to keep grinding. We're just going to keep doing what we do at ECC. And again, great to have great friends like Nir. There's others that are kind of bridging. Maya is another DEX that now supports Zcash, and we need more of those kind of options outside of the traditional financial system. So we'll keep building those bridges as well.
I love it. Keep building bridges, keep building private money. Josh, thank you so much for all the great work that you've done. Thank you for coming on the show and helping us understand Zcash as well as introduce it to a wider set of the global population. It's really been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
See you again soon. Cheers.
All right.